RAF Balderton is in Nottinghamshire, just 2 miles south of Newark-on-Trent. It opened in June 1941 and was closed to flying in 1945, eventually being abandoned after being used for explosive storage until August 1955. A detailed history of this airfield and its links to the RAF, the USAAF's 437th and 439th Troop Carrier Groups, and the Meteor Flight Trials Unit can be found in a separate video on my channel. For much of the following, I'm indebted to Leighton Topham, a member of the RAF Balderton Research Group who has written to me on a number of occasions with accounts from the airfield. Leighton wrote to me on the 9th of December 2023 stating that I work on one of the communal sites that was RAF Balderton, and a bloke I work with mentioned hearing female voices in the factory. We are basically next to the former WAF site and were quite shocked because no females were on the site. Leighton also mentioned that locals have seen airmen on the former accommodation sites that are now being developed into housing. He sent me a photocopy of an article from the RAF Balderton Research Group dated 2nd of November 2016, where it was written that a local lady has contacted the group and shared a rather spooky story about RAF Balderton with us. When I was a child, my granddad and dad used to collect military and RAF vehicles and memorabilia. I spent weekends as a child going to RAF and military bases, shows and events. My first spooky encounter happened at the site near the main entrance of RAF Balderton. I was only 6 or 7-ish. I was stood facing the runway. I noticed 2 airmen in flight jackets. One was taller and the other slightly shorter. He was carrying a rucksack type thing in his right hand. I watched them walk up the track. They never turned to acknowledge me. Then I heard noises of planes starting up, active noises of a working air site. Lights began to flash and a heavy mist started to roll in from the back of the site. In the mist, I could see people and also airplanes taking off quickly. It was a very busy place. I could even smell the aviation fuel. I told Dad we needed to go before they saw us and the planes hit us. I remember Dad seeming unaware of what I could see, smell and hear, but he turned to Grandad and said a storm was coming, hence the mist and darkened sky, so we should get going before the storm breaks. I ran to the car and told them there were ghosts. They looked at me in disbelief. I've never been so relieved to be safe in the car. It wasn't so much the ghosts scared me, but the noise was so loud and terrifying, and worrying the adults couldn't see and hear what I had witnessed. She concluded stating that she had never set foot on that site again, and didn't intend to either. Leighton wrote again on the 11th of December with an account from a lady called Diane. She had communicated with the RAF Balderton Research Group regarding the experience of her late parents, who had moved into one of the disused huts at RAF Balderton after the war. I have no memory nor recollection of these happenings. Some were before I was born, some when I was a baby. These events were told and retold many times by my parents. We lived in a Nissen hut on RAF Balderton. The local council had by then numbered and given addresses to each camp and hut for the many people that had moved in there due to the housing shortage. My parents moved in late 1946 or early 47. They were living there through the bad winter of 47 and lived in the Nissen hut for 7 years. Both parents witnessed seeing an airman dressed in a blue uniform, including a cap, appearing to walk through the building, but not using the doors. He walked through the length of the whole structure, through walls, carrying a mashing can. Every time it happened in the same way. At the time, my parents had a dog, a Welsh Terrier type. Every time the airman appeared, the Nissen hut went very, very cold, and the dog would howl and his hackles would rise. John Good wrote to me via Facebook on the 13th of January 2025. My 2 school friends lived on a farm which was part of the airfield and told me many stories. It's well spooked. A new housing estate was built on part of the airfield, and I know many people have had paranormal things happen. It's next to the old Balderton Hospital, which was a massive mental hospital when I was growing up as a kid. Some of my friends who worked there would say army trucks and soldiers would drive through at night. John added that an aircraft crashed into a house on London Road after it failed to reach the runway. The house was rebuilt. My friend lived in the house next door. They moved when I was at school as they couldn't stand the poltergeist activity there. And lastly, we have Balderton Hall, on the southern outskirts of the village, which was built in 1840 for Thomas Spragging Godfrey. It was bought in 1930 by Nottinghamshire County Council for conversion to a mental hospital, but work on this stopped during World War II. The hall is included here because during the war it was used as officer accommodation for RAF Balderton. Balderton Hall was said to be haunted by 2 elderly female ghosts in blue Victorian dresses, and also the apparition of a young blonde girl, also of the Victorian period, who was said to run down a corridor before vanishing. However, in a link to the airfield, the ghost of a US pilot has been said to walk around the grounds.